This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and getting better every single day. The gentleman I'm going to be bringing on today, I had the pleasure of being on his show, and I knew, man, I had to have him on because he is going to help us do all of those things. No question about it. And he's just a cool guy. Brant Menswar is a renowned personal development coach known as America's personal development coach. He's appeared on major TV networks and worked with notable companies to promote values-driven leadership. As the CEO of Black Sheep Foundry LLC, he helps individuals and organizations embrace values-based leadership through his book, Black Sheep. Brant's approach focuses on uniting through shared values and has been effective in diverse settings from businesses to families. He empowers people to discover their core values, make impactful choices, fulfill their purpose, and create positive influences. Brant, what's up, brother? How you doing?
How you doing, brother? Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's truly my pleasure. So I'm going to just go right into Black Sheep. Clearly, that is something that was pretty strategic, but I'm just curious, why Black Sheep? What's the significance behind it?
Well, I think we've all at one point or another felt like a black sheep in our lives. And, up until my mid 40s, I think I had the same idea that everyone else was, which was black sheep are basically an outcast, right? Someone who doesn't fit in, someone who's been sort of excommunicated. But it wasn't until I had a conversation with someone who told me the real reason why farmers don't value black sheep the same way as the rest of the flock. And the reason is because a black sheep's wool cannot be dyed. So every black sheep, in effect, is 100% authentically original, and it can't be made into something that it wasn't meant to be. And when I heard that, I'm like, God, that's my life's journey. Like, that's my goal, is to be that one of a kind original creation that I was made to be. Why am I running from wanting to be a black sheep when I should be running towards it? And so, that led to the idea that we have what I like to call a flock of 5 black sheep values. These are our deeply held personal core values that no matter how much someone wants to try to influence you or twist things around, they simply will not be moved like a black sheep's wool.
Yeah, it is fascinating because you said mid 40s where you really kind of discovered like, hey, man, being a black sheep's not a bad thing. In fact, it's awesome. It's exactly the most powerful position I can stand in is to be 100% authentic. Mm-hmm. It is fascinating that it happens so often that I don't know why after the 30s, after we go through this, but people start to really discover and embrace who they are. How can we get more people to do it earlier, brother? Because it is such a freeing feeling to get to this place where it's like, yeah, man, I like who I am. And by the way, if you don't, I want you to, but it's none of my business. So how do we get people to get there earlier?
Well, it's less than 1% of people who could tell you with conviction what their 5 non-negotiable values are. Everyone can tell you the 30 things that are really important to them, but we confuse things that are really important from non-negotiable. We treat them like they're an inch apart, but they're really a mile apart. And that doesn't happen until you've lived enough life to experience the ups and downs at extremes before you decide to get serious, because winging it is easy. It's just easy. And so our brains are programmed to choose the easy path, always, always, always. And so because of that, we just continue to wing it. Some of us experience huge success while we're winging it, which is also a deterrent why no one wants to go that extra route, because they don't even know that there's another level. I like to say that sometimes you don't see that there's another peak until you climb the mountain that you're on. When you climb that mountain and you're at the top, then you start to see off in the distance, there's another mountain that's twice the size of this, but you couldn't see it because it was blocked by your own mountain to start with. And so until you get into that drive, until you have that sort of innate competitiveness built into you, it makes it really, really difficult. Or you have some sort of catastrophic life circumstance that happens. For me, it was losing my son. That was the impetus to really dig deep and find out what my non-negotiables were, because I was not prepared to handle that scenario, and it ruined me for years afterwards.
Well, you stopped me in my tracks there, because it is the one thing that probably the one thing I believe more than anything, like, a parent should never outlive their child. And I'm sorry for your loss, bro. That's
Thank
incredibly, you. I can't even understand. I really can't.
Hmm.
But I guess the beauty that comes from loss is you figure out what is so valuable to you. Not even, you're calling them, like, these are the non-negotiables. And it's one of my favorite two words put together, non-negotiables,
Mm-hmm.
because it does allow us to truly step into our power, to not go along to get along, and always just, and I did it for years, man. God, I was in that for years. Tell me what you arrived at, if you're comfortable, I assume,
Sure.
sharing your 5 non-negotiables, because I'm really
Sure.
curious to see what you landed on.
Yeah. So most of us have somewhere between 4 and 6, right? Less than 4 isn't really practical. More than 6 is not as well, because these are things that you have to deliberately feed every day, right? You have to engage these values with deliberate intention every single day to be living your life on purpose. The phrase "on purpose" means in alignment with your purpose. Well, your purpose is born from the activation of these values. And so that's how this whole thing works together, right? That's the synergy between values, purpose, and mission. That's sort of how it all works. So mine are creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, and authenticity. Those, I have 6, right? So 20 years in the music business. As a rock star, we do everything to excess. So I needed an extra in my own life. But for me, the idea, getting up every day, is to feed all of these black sheep values. It's my job. I'm the shepherd. They're my sheep. I have to feed them every single day. They might not all get the same amount of food. Some might get table scraps one day. Some might get a 7-course meal, but everybody gets fed every single day. That only happens with deliberate intention, meaning I program these values into my calendar. If you looked at my calendar, you would see today, this appointment, doing this, this podcast, JM, with you, you would see that next to it, there's 3 words written. It's hope, impact, and empathy. Those are the 3 things that I wanted to bring to the table during this conversation. I want to do it. I want to speak them into existence. I don't want to wait for a proper moment. I'm going to choose to bring those 3 things to this conversation, and I'm going to strategically touch on those things throughout this conversation, because those are the things that I want people to walk away with when they're done listening to this.
Yeah, and they're big words. I mean, literally, hope, to my favorite book that I give out, like it's, my favorite Christmas present, Man's Search for Meaning, and not giving it away, but it's all based on hope, right? And having this, and I want to take you back. I know it's awful, but when you are in the darkest of dark moments, which would, I assume, be when you lost your son. Again,
Sure.
I can't imagine. I really can't.
Mm-hmm.
But to have hope, that had to be hard to find, I have to imagine, because this is just, it's awful. How did you get yourself out of it, brother? Because there's so many people listening that, whether it's a loss of a family member, or maybe whatever grieving they're going through, finding hope, that's not easy. How did you find it?
Well, I'm going to answer that with a question to you. What is hope to you? What is hope?
Hope to me is, oh man, that's a deep question. Hope is,
this is the reason that hope is difficult to find.
Yeah.
Is because of this right here, right? You're trying to put your finger on. I'm going to tell you exactly what hope is, and it's going to change your whole life. Okay. Hope is a combination of desire and expectation. That's all it is. We make it into something that it's not. Hope is a combination of desire and expectation. How much do you want something, and what's the expectation of when you get it or when you don't get it, right? So that's why there's 2 sides of hope. There's the hope that you you desire at your highest level. I wanted my son to survive, and the first time he survived, fantastic. I got exactly what I wanted. But the dark side to hope is when you want something real bad and you don't get that expectation, right? You don't get the result that you want. It's still hope. There's just two shades of it, right? And so the idea for me, how I pulled myself out, was once I was able to sort of, you can logic yourself, you can academic yourself into believing that hope is this combination of these two things, and not get too crazy with it. But it wasn't until a friend of mine sort of sat me down. I was spiraling hard, right? And it had been a year or so, and my life was off the rails. And they said, look, I understand you're distraught. I completely understand. We all loved Theo. I get it. But he said, when you die, you really die twice. And I was like, I don't know what you mean by that. And he goes, well, the first time you die is when you leave this earth, but the second time is when your name is spoken for the last time. So I understand you're distraught, but what I want to know is, what are you doing to make sure Theo's second life outlives his first? Because this isn't it. And just check me into the boards, man. And that made me go, I get it. Here's the combination of desire and expectation. I want to put Theo's name on other people's lips to show the impact that his life, the short life, 23 years old, that he had. We lost him to a combination of COVID and cancer. And so, that was, I want to make sure that his second life outlives his first. And that only happens by getting my desire and expectation in line of what I can control through my Black Sheep values. And so that's what got me back on track. And for the last, it's only been about 9 months that I've got my life back together. So, that is something that I'm incredibly proud of, and is my driving force today, to make sure that I do this work, that I have these conversations, that I speak at these conferences. That's what people walk away with, is understanding how to take control of their lives so that they're living with deliberate intention and they're not winging it.
Yeah, what an amazing friend, whoever that was, because in that moment, it's like, look, man, you just want somebody to see you, to feel your pain, and yet I think you said was a he, had the foresight to say, look, I'm not helping you as a friend by just hugging and saying, I'm sorry. I'm going to push you to really realize, getting back to your core values, like, hey, Brant, you have so much to give. Theo's impact can be amazing, but you're fucking it up right now because you're in so much just distraught and gloom. What an incredible guy, and to do that for you.
Yeah, those are one of the things that we work with people on is who's in your inner circle, right? Who are the 5 people that you're going to spend the most amount of time with over the next year? And those are the people that have earned the right to have that type of conversation with you. And that it's not an easy conversation. Listen, when someone goes through that, what's the length of time you put on something and allow somebody to wallow until you decide it's enough? And that conversation you have to earn the right? You can't have that conversation with somebody you barely know. It has to be somebody who wants what's best for you, genuinely loves you, and is concerned, right? And I think that was pretty. I'm very fortunate to have not only a pretty tight inner circle, but the next level of connection for me and friends are all people who care deeply about me and my health, and wanted to make sure that I was able to pull out of just something awful that nobody wants to experience.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea, because love so often gets this, sunshine and rainbows, but that was truly kind of a tough love type of advice, to say, Brant, I love you enough to say, look, there's so much more to give. Honor Theo, and let's get back to living and having impact. The word empathy, because I want to honor what you're bringing to the table.
Sure.
I notice so much right now in our world, the lack of empathy. Now, without making this a political thing, because it's not, I don't care if people are right or left. None of that shit matters to me.
Right.
I watched one of the worst examples of empathy ever recently, when Biden went to Hawaii and said, You know what, guys? I understand how you feel because I once had a lightning strike and my power went out for like a couple hours. I sat there, Brant. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, as a leader of the free world, as a leader in general,
Yeah.
have some self-awareness, have some
Yeah.
empathy, but it's
Yeah.
not relate to them. It's like saying I have a little heartburn and you just experience heart attack, cancer, stroke at the same time. But I
Yeah.
understand. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Why are we lacking this, brother? Where have we gone so awry with this empathy word?
Yeah. So this is a conversation I've been having a lot with my corporate clients recently, right? Trying to get corporate clients to understand and own their corporate values, and then how do you activate those values in real life is a difficult task, right? There are two ways. There are two ways that people connect at the strongest level, right? The first is through values, is through these things that are non-negotiable favorites for us, right? If we both love the Boston Red Sox or the New York Yankees, if we both, whatever that is, there's an instantaneous connection based on values of our favorites. Our favorites are manifestations of our values. And so, the idea is that is one of the strongest ways that we connect as humans. But the second way that we connect is suffering. And so when that's the case, the words were wrong, right? That he chose. But what he's actually connecting with is the suffering. And that's difficult because when we are suffering, we are typically vulnerable and we don't always know exactly what to say or do because the pain sometimes overwhelms our better judgment. And so, whether it's on the political sides, both sides, whether it's family squabbles, stuff at work, if you are not giving people the opportunity to connect through values, then you are unintentionally leading them to connect through suffering. And that is not what you want. You don't want the water cooler talk. You don't want people bitching about how long this project has taken. You don't want someone in your family to complain about how so-and-so gets all the attention or this, that, or the other thing. You have to provide. If it were me and I was coaching the president, I would have said, don't, acknowledge the suffering, but connect on the values, connect on the strength that this community will have to rebuild, on the perseverance that exists in this community, on all of these things that we hold near and dear as Americans, and connect on the values instead of the suffering, because suffering is a dangerous way to connect, right? It is loaded with emotion and the potential for bad decisions. And so that is what I believe what you saw right there. The intention was good, but the execution was horrible. And that is what happens when you connect on suffering. It's like, again, you find out that I lose my son. What can you say? You got to be really careful with your words, right? You don't want to say anything that's going to offend. You don't want to say anything that might be construed in the wrong way. And all of a sudden, you're thinking 10x what you just were a second ago to try to be super careful to honor what has happened. And you don't have the words because you haven't been through it. And so it makes it really difficult. And in those types of scenarios, when these natural disasters, these obviously the wildfires in Hawaii or the hurricane who just hits California, it's these things that even if you've been through them, I have found that the best thing that you can do is to just tell people that you're there with them. Listen, I'm standing right next to you and I'm here for whatever you need. I'm a phone call away, right? That's all you can do because no one wants to hear anything else. That's the thing. Most of the time, they just want to be left alone, right? You got to sort through these things in your head. You've got to sort through the idea of what you're dealing with before you're willing to listen to anybody's advice of how to do this, that, or the other, because you don't want advice. You just want whatever happened to not have happened. That's it. I didn't want to lose my house to this hurricane. I didn't want to lose my community or family member to this fire. I didn't want my son to die from cancer and COVID. Yeah, all those things. But there's nothing you can say that's going to change the circumstance, right? And so the idea is, don't try to change the circumstance. Acknowledge the circumstance and let them know you're walking next to them. That's all I want. I just want to know that if I'm having a bad day, I can turn and you're right there. That's it. That's the best you can hope for.
How receptive have you found these leaders to that advice? Because now we're talking about real human connection. And when we're talking, Fortune 500 companies, or we're in the corporate world, human connection, soft skills, quote unquote, which that's not a favorite term of mine at all. These basic human things that we really need to show up at in our authentic way.
Yeah.
How receptive are they to what you're saying, brother? Is there a lot of pushback to that?
I'm going to tell you that it's the more emotionally intelligent a leader is, the easier the conversation is. But what typically ends up happening is it's not a hierarchy, right? It's not the Catholic Church. It doesn't just start at the top and everything trickles down. What you end up finding is pockets within organizations that look very different than other pockets within the organization, right? Think of it as a franchise, right? If I own a restaurant franchise, and I might have 100 franchises in that restaurant chain, and my top performing restaurant is 25% more profitable than my least profitable franchise in the chain. Those two, even though it's the same deal, even though you walk in, it looks the same, they feel very, very different. And there's a reason that one of them is at the top and one is at the bottom. And so the reason is they get these sorts of things. The one at the top understands the emotional intelligence involved with what does it mean to really connect to a customer, to connect to your coworkers. The ones at the bottom are chasing a dollar. They're just trying to hit a KPI. They're just trying to hit a metric. That's all they're doing. They're not actually worried about the experience that's happening. They're worried about the profitability at the end of the year.
Yeah, so those are obviously palpable cultures that you're feeling as you walk through the door. One, like you said, they're clear on their purpose, I'm guessing. They're really intentional in every way they show up, how you behave. This is how we're going to show up today, versus, as you said, chasing that dollar. For all the business owners listening right now that are going, okay, I can feel that culture. I felt how it feels different. How do we reinforce as a community, as a culture within that organization, that particular franchise? How do you reinforce these cultural values so that they don't get lost, so that, we have a down quarter, we have a down month, and now all of a sudden we are chasing the almighty dollar? How do we reinforce it, brothers, so that we can stay up and we're not always going peaks and valleys, but rather we are clear on our purpose? Do you have some tangible ways that you found to be effective?
100%. The first thing to understand is that corporate values are not employee values. They're not. And the way that I would relate that is this. If you asked me to take care of your dog for the weekend, Jam, if you said, look, I'm going away for the weekend, would you come and take care of my dog? My answer is going to be yes, because I have empathy and I want to help you, right? We have a relationship. I want to do that. But the truth is, I don't like dogs. I don't want to take care of your dog, but I'm doing it because of the relationship at stake. And you asked, right? So, I do it. I go over, I take the dog out for a walk. I pick up the dog shit after they're on their walk. I do all those sorts of things, and I'm just mumbling and cursing under my breath the entire time. You get back and I'm like, hey, welcome back, man. Thanks so much. I hope you had a good time. Everything is cool until the next time you go away. And when you ask, I'm not available. I'm not available. I don't want to be involved. You know why? Because I didn't get anything that matters most to me in that equation. I only got what matters most to you, and that's called compliance. And so these organizations, when they only care about their values and they don't build bridges to connect to employee values, the best case scenario is they get compliance, and compliance sucks. Compliance feels awful. In my talks, I always say, look, if you've ever seen Law and Order, the TV show always starts the same way. Someone comes down from some horrible thing that's happened. They bring them to the station. They shine this white light in their face in this cold room. And they say, if you want this to go well, we want your complete, and they go, cooperation. I'm like, yeah. What they don't want is your collaboration, because collaboration requires a shared goal. And so I asked someone, why do you think they don't want your collaboration? And as they go to answer, I scream at them, it doesn't matter what you want. And they jump back in their chair. And I said, how does that feel? Well, that's what it feels like when you're asking someone to cooperate, because only one of us gets what we want. And so in these organizations, they have to understand that if they're only trying to get what they want, they're asking people to cooperate. Cooperation requires compliance, and compliance feels bad, right? So we have to build bridges. So in that instance, let's say, and I'm just rolling with this idea of a dog, right? So you asked me to do the dog. If we were really tight, you know that I'm a coffee guy, right? I'm a snob, I'm a coffee snob. And you could say, listen, man, could you really do me a favor and watch my dog? I have got the best Colombian coffee you have ever tasted. I've set it up. It's ready to go. It's in the machine. Go ahead and pour yourself a cup of coffee. And listen, the other thing, I cannot, for whatever reason, get my dog to sit. I've taken the class. You are one of the most creative people I know. Could you try for just a second to see if there's something that I'm missing? Maybe there's some, that you could figure out that no one else has been able to figure out. Well, now you've just gotten a couple of my values in place, right? You sat there and you go, okay, creativity is one. Yeah. All right. Okay. Coffee is one of my favorite things, and it's based on connection, right? It's what happens when we have coffee. It's the connection to the people that we have coffee with, right? Family in my hierarchy is really just connection, and the family of values of connection is the word family. And so it's one of those things that I'm like, okay, so now you're letting me use things that are most important to me to connect with what's important to you. And because of that, I show up with intention. Oh, can't wait to have this cup of coffee. I know you left me this cup of coffee. All right, dog. Listen, I don't like you, but we're going to find out a way for you to sit right now, right? And I'm going to go through all of I'm going to be as creative as I possibly can. And that experience becomes completely different. And all of a sudden, I'm engaged at a way different level than, hey, can you watch my dog? I got to go away for the weekend. That level of deliberate intention requires the leaders to set those things up. It requires them to know what the non-negotiable values of their employees are. You can't care for your employees until you know what your employees care about. And when that happens, you can build bridges to connect no matter where it is you want them to go.
Well, that was creative, by the way. I love how you tied that in. And what's amazing to me is that it didn't take a lot of effort to know, all right, Brant likes coffee. Let me get this. This means something to him. Now I'm going to challenge him. So not only is he doing me a favor, but I'm going to challenge him to get my dog to sit. Now Brant has a purpose. It was absolutely brilliant, brother. I love it. 20 years of rock star. I'm going to totally generalize for a moment. Yeah. When I think rock star, I don't think personal development. That's just not where I'm going. Bang, bang. Like rock star, personal development. And that's a generalization, and it's not probably the right one. But where did you find personal development in your world where you're like, oh, yeah, this is my thing. I got hooked? Because I can remember the train ride when I absolutely got hooked back in Europe, back when I was like 20 years old. So what was it for you? Do you remember the moment or what really grabbed you?
I don't know that it was a specific moment. What I will tell you is that I grew up in a highly competitive athletic environment, right? And the competitiveness, the desire to win fueled every choice I made. That meant if I had to read a book to figure something out, I'm going to read the book. Whatever was going to give me that edge. If I had to, I was a big baseball guy. So if I had to sit there and study all the stats from this team that's coming in, and what all of the people, what they hit the last time and how many times they faced a curveball, and how all these sorts of things led me down that sort of, it's the same idea of personal development, right? It's this idea of I want to make myself better, and I know that it's going to take some work. So I believe that the seed that was planted was competitiveness to start, right? I'm going to say this, I want to make a lot of people mad. We have raised some really weak generations behind us. They have no fortitude, right? And that's because they've never fucking lost at anything, because losing hurts and everybody wants to protect them. Everybody got a trophy for participating. That sort of thing it's just such bullshit to me on so many levels. I understand the reasons why. I get why you want to do that. I understand want to protect our children. I understand all of that. But they learn so much more from losing than winning. They have to learn how to deal with that. Otherwise, they're 23 years old and they go, "What do you mean I don't get a 7% raise? I showed up every day. I've been on time every day." It's like, well, that's your job. You don't get bonused for doing your job. You get bonused for doing extraordinary things. And unless you're capable of experienced extraordinary things, you're never going to get it. And so that, to me, is sort of where that started. Music was just another way for me to feed my sheep. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, right? But as a songwriter, I want to connect. I want to empathize. I want them to see themselves in the song. I want to provide them hope. So wherever they're at right now, they know that things can change. I want to have impact. I want to do all of those things, that connection that exists, that I want to be me. I want to be authentic. That's why if you listen to one album from Big Kettle Drum and another album, they sound very different, because we were in different spots. We were listening to different things. We had different influences. It wasn't Nickelback. It wasn't the same album 8 times in a row, right? It was something different. And that just transitioned when Theo got sick and I realized I had to come off the road. I just had to find another way to feed these sheep that I had been doing for 20 years. And so being on stage and moving into that personal development space was really not a big bridge. It wasn't a long bridge to build. It was a very short bridge, but it had to be done strategically to be able to use all of the things that I had learned through being a songwriter and a performer. And whether I'm playing some dive bar in Tuscaloosa or I'm playing a 10,000 person festival, the desire is to still feel like that person in the back is connected to you, right? That no matter where you're at. And so it's the same thing now, walking onto a platform at a conference. I want that person in the back row to feel like I'm standing right next to them. And so it's that desire for connection that I have to feed every single time.
Brother, my hair stood up when you were talking about the parent thing, because I could not agree with you more. We are stealing, we are robbing, we are depriving our kids the benefit of when you do win. It's after you know how much defeat sucks, how much losing sucks. Like, now you're taking that away from them. You're taking away their ability so many ways, man. And I don't know why, how the hell we got there. But brother, I'm like, I want to get on stage right now and talk to the world of parents and be like, stop it. Let your kids fail. That's how you learned. That's a good thing.
It's overcorrecting, right? That's exactly what it is. It's overcorrecting. We experience things that these kids from, they don't know what it's like to come home and be by yourself for hours, while you wait for both parents, because you couldn't live off of one salary. Both parents had to work. You had to do different things. You got hurt. You rubbed some dirt in it. I can still remember bitching to my baseball coach that my elbow hurt, and he took my arm. He was a guy who chewed tobacco all the time. He freaking spit tobacco into the pit of my arm and rubbed it in. He goes, "All right, you're good. Get the hell out of here." And I was like, "All right, I guess I'm okay now." That thing today, that guy would be in jail for doing that. And it's a completely different mindset of being tough. And I understand that we overcorrected because we want something better for our kids, right? We don't want them to struggle like we struggled. And so I totally get that, but you can't protect them from the loss. They have to understand what it feels like to lose so that they desire to win. It's not that the fact that we just care about winning and all we want to do is win. No, that's part of it. But the real thing is, I don't care so much if your blood and guts have to win at all costs. I care that you want to win. That's all I care about. As long as you have the desire to win, I'm good. But if you don't have the desire to win, life is going to be really difficult for you, no matter what you choose to do. You have to have that innate want and desire to win. And when you take away all the good things that happen when you win, because you give it to them when they lose, it makes it almost impossible to accomplish that task.
Brother, it's so good. I want to take that last 2 minutes and just, all right, let's get it out to the world. They need to hear it. Shoot, I know. Oh, I lost my train of thought for a second. Boundaries. When I say that word, because when I think of core values, when I think of non-negotiables, boundaries immediately come to play. And recently, I have really pulled away from groups of people that I was close with. And it's not that I dislike them.
Yep.
We are just not aligned anymore. And I am not being lifted up. In fact, I feel like I'm being brought down. Now, there's a bit of a loneliness that can happen, or at least that's been the experience that I've really had as you set these boundaries, because people don't, what are you talking about? Like, no, we're all friends. Let's hang out. No, actually, I'm not in alignment with you. That doesn't make you bad. It just means we don't jive any longer. What are your thoughts on that, brother? And what have you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, kudos to you for doing it. It's a difficult thing to do, especially when some of these people are your closest ties, right? And you just come to the realization that the relationship isn't helping you in any way. It's actually maybe even hurting you in some ways. And so, the idea of defining your non-negotiables is when you define your non-negotiables, you are really setting boundaries, right? Anything that violates that value now is a boundary. So until you do that, you only have an idea of where your boundaries are, right? And why it's so important. Why it's so important to know exactly where your boundary is it's like, if you and I were 10 feet from the edge of the Grand Canyon, and we could walk side by side, we could go right up to the edge, hang our toes over the edge, and look out over this incredible wonder of the world, right? And just take it in for all it's worth. If we backed up, and I said, all right, man, close your eyes and we're going to do this again, right? You're going to take 1 or 2 steps and you're going to stop. And I'm going to grab you. I'm going to go, I got you, man. I got you. Don't worry about it. You might take 1 more step, but then you're like, I don't like this, right? And the reason you don't like it is because you can't see where the edge is. And when you can't see where the edge is, we stay back. Well, the trouble is everything that's truly amazing in life lives on the edge. You have to be on the edge. And if you don't define it, you'll never approach it because you're going to be too scared. You're going to keep yourself back 10 feet from what's possible because you're too afraid, because you can't see where things stop. And that's why you need to define these things so that you can straddle that boundary, because that's where all the amazing, incredible things in life truly happen.
Brother, you paint great pictures, by the way. As you're talking, I pictured myself at the Grand Canyon and I stopped. I think I may have done 2 steps and I was like, no, man, I'm good. But you painted this beautiful picture and I can see why you excel so much on stage. You had said earlier that 99% of people really aren't clear of their non-negotiables. All right. Yes. Don't like those. Don't like the percentages, because I want people to live on the edge to fully experience life. As when you were describing that, I'm like, dude, being on that edge is when you feel and experience life. Losing, winning, that's when you experience and feel life. What would you say to people listening to say, hey, I don't want you to be the 99%. I want you to be in that 1%. How do they really find those non-negotiables, brother? How do they dig deep to know this is what's really, really important to me, and I don't compromise these no matter what?
First thing I'm going to do is encourage you to have a really difficult, honest, bone-crushing conversation with yourself, right? And what I'm going to say is, do you believe you were meant for more? Do you believe you were meant for more? I believe I was, and I am. And that requires work. So if you believe you were meant for more and you're willing to do just a little bit of work, we can start to move towards that direction, and we can see how much more you were meant for, right? That's the challenge. How we're going to do it, there's a couple of ways, but the easiest way, we've developed our own assessment. It's at blacksheepfoundry.com. You could go to brantmenswar.com. Either one, you can get there from both places. And you can take the Black Sheep Values Assessment. It's an online assessment. You can do it mobile on your phone, and it is maybe 10 minutes long. What it's going to do is it's going to make you realize how many things you consider to be really important. And then it's going to pit those words against each other to try to get you to your non-negotiables, right? Think of it as March Madness, right? You got 30 different words that you're like, these are all the things that are so important to me. But now the tournament has to happen so that we can get that down to only 5 teams left, right? And that's the goal. And so it will do that for you. It's all done in the background, the algorithms and all that sort of things. Our values systems exist in families, and there are 5 different families of values that exist based on our research. And it sort of will pit words against each other within those families, so that you end up having a more balanced output when you're done. But some of us live in 1 or 2 of those quadrants, as opposed to an even distribution across the way. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It just comes with the awareness that you're going to have some blind spots that you have to really pay attention to. So I would go online, take the 10 minutes, look and see what you come out with as your final result. As soon as you're done, you get something emailed to you immediately. It's private, doesn't go to anybody else. That says, here are your results. Here are all the things you consider to be really important. Here are the words that you sort of pitted against each other. And here are your final 5. And the idea is that of those 5, 2 or 3 of them are 100% accurate, and 2 or 3 of them are complete fabricated bullshit. And you just have to do a little bit of work, because some of us have been raised to care for other people's sheep, and it takes time. It takes time to determine, is that yours, or are you caring for somebody else's? And it comes with a free 2-week workbook that allows you to track your values and see what's real and what's not real, and all those sorts of things. So that's all designed to be there for free for people who want to do the work. Even with all the things that we've done to make it as easy as possible, it's a shallow dive into a very deep pool, but it gets the conversation started. I'm still going to tell you that hardly anyone will do the work, because it requires a level of vulnerability that's uncomfortable. And we don't want to have that conversation, even if it's only with ourselves. So why do I tell you that? For the ones that are willing to do it, you will find life easy to crush. You can just get out there, and it becomes the competitive advantage over everybody else. And if they don't want to do the work, good. One less person I need to worry about to get to where I want to go. And that's the idea of how the competitor in me has approached this. I don't like losing. I don't like compromising. And so I have to learn to live with deliberate intention, to be in control of what I can control in my life. And that's, when do I activate and speak these values into existence? The minute I started to do that 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, my entire life changed. I went from doing 20 talks a year to 70 talks a year. I went from making $5,000 a talk to $20,000 a talk. I went from doing all these different things because I stopped letting other people tell me what I'm capable of and what I'm meant for. When I decided I was meant for more and I started living my life with deliberate intention, everything changed. It will be the same for you if you have the balls to actually do the work. And that's what it's going to take.
Brother, I can't wait to go take the assessment. I mean that because what an incredible thing that you put together to really help guide people to say, look, here's an algorithm. By the way, the end result, 2 are going to be legit, 2 are going to be bullshit. Yep. Now dive in and do more work.
Yeah.
And it's funny we call it work, because I understand what you're saying. It takes intention. It's not easy, but it is so freaking rewarding and fulfilling, brother.
Totally.
Oh my God, I'm looking at the clock. I could listen to you for days. Where can they find you? Obviously, you said blacksheepfoundry.com to go to the assessment. Where else is a good place for people to connect with you online? They want to hear you speak. They want to do more work with you, brother. Where can they find you?
Just brantmenswar.com, BrantMenswar. All my socials are at Brant Menswar. So whether it's TikTok or it's Instagram or LinkedIn, whatever it might be, I try to stay really active on LinkedIn for sure. That's more of the business focused stuff. TikTok, we try to keep to the personal development stuff there as well. So wherever you choose to follow, you'll find some content there.
Brother, thank you for coming in, being so authentic, being that genuine person that you are. And again, hope, empathy, impact. I know you brought all of those for me, and I know the audience will feel the same. So your intention was pure, and it was amazing, brother. So thank you.
Thank you so much, pal. Appreciate you.
Guys, go check it out. Go do the assessment. I promise you, I've not even heard of an assessment this way, the way that he described it. To have this tailored to you without you having to just sit and meditate for days on end quietly. Look, that's what it takes. He is providing you a tool. Go check it out. Share this with someone. I promise you, whether somebody's lost someone, whether somebody wants to find themselves, Brant literally is leading you there, and it was incredible. So share this episode out. Until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate you all so much. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.